Hey everyone, James Lynch here doing a quick reaction video to the news that Jan Blachowicz will now be taking on Navajo Sterling at UFC Belgrade. This according to the official UFC website. And by the way, I figured out how to do two monitors here while I'm on the road. I'm actually in Plymouth right now for Cage Titans, so that's why the setup looks a little bit different here. But yeah, pretty good opponent here, and I'm just glad that Jan gets a fight. He's obviously been out for a bit with the injury from the last fight, so good to see him still on this card. Of course, Bogdan Gustaf moved to the main event of UFC Abu Dhabi coming up here next Saturday. So it made sense that Jan needed a new opponent. I think Sterling kind of fits the bill. Sterling been pretty active this year. This will be his third fight, and a little bit of history here, right? Jan Blachowicz defeating Israel Adesanya a number of years ago. Navajo Sterling and Israel Adesanya used to train together for a number of years. Obviously, we know the news that Adesanya has left City Kickboxing. So let's do a quick tail of the tape between these two. You can see Jan Blachowicz coming in at, sorry, my mouse is a little shaky here. He is 43 years old, 6'2" with a 78-inch reach. He'll be taking on Navajo Sterling, who's much younger here. He is 28 years old, 6'4" with a 79-inch reach. You'll see there Sterling going to have a height and reach advantage in this fight. Yeah, 1-inch reach and 2-inch height advantage. He's also way younger here at 28 compared to 43 for Jan. And of course, the big thing with Jan lately has been just, injuries, layoffs, all that stuff. If we look at it there, had the two scheduled fights with Bogdan, had the draw against Bogdan in a fight where he actually got dropped in that one, if you remember. Ended up almost winning the fight because he came back. Obviously, Bogdan getting gassed in that fight. But this was the first time we've seen Jan dropped in a while, and it was a bit concerning. And obviously, with the age and the injuries, Jan, potentially on a bit of a decline here with him getting dropped in that fight. So that's the big concerning one. Did go the distance with Carlos Ulberg, which, I guess is a badge of honor at this point, considering that Carlos Ulberg won the title by knocking out Yuri Prochazka. You look at Alex Pereira, couldn't knock him out. Is Jan durable enough to survive the onslaught from Navajo Sterling? That's the big question in this fight. Jan hasn't won a fight since the Rakic matchup back in 2022. That was, of course, a leg injury in a fight that was fairly even sort of leading into that. So it's been a while since Jan's had like a clean win here. But look at this gauntlet of opponents here for the most part. He's had the Ankalaev fight, which, again, very close fight. He had the split decision with Pereira, Carlos Ulberg, and Bogdan. So is it a case of, Jan has lost a step, or is it a case of him fighting great opposition? We're going to find out in this fight, because I think Sterling is a good replacement and a good test here for Bogdan Gustaf, who I think they're kind of on the same level in that point. So big fight here for Jan. He's obviously got to win it with, like I said, the lack of activity and just his age as well. And Navajo Sterling, he came into the UFC, and I think, just my opinion, didn't really impress too much, right? If you remember, he came in, he got that win on Contender Series, went the distance with Tuco, Urslan went the distance there, and then Bellato as well. And so you're kind of waiting for him to break through, right? Like this is subpar opposition he's been fighting in the light heavyweight division. And then he really broke out earlier this year against Bruno Lopez, getting the second round finish in that one. That was in Seattle. And then Ion Cutelaba getting a second round finish there. Still don't think he's fought the best opposition. He's, finishing these guys, which is very encouraging. Can he go out there and do the same to Jan Blachowicz? And I guess I should mention, too, Sterling training with Carlos Ulberg, a man who has already defeated Jan Blachowicz. Although that fight, if you look on the, scorecards, if we go to MMAdecisions.com, a lot of people felt like Jan might have done enough to edge that one out. Let me just look at this on MMA Decisions. Just pointing this out because, again, you see the loss to Ulberg, but it was fairly close here. So if you look at Ulberg defeating Blachowicz, what were the media's feelings on this one? Because I remember thinking Jan probably edged that one out. Sorry, it's just taking a bit here. We'll get the scorecards up in a second here. But yeah, very close fight with Carlos Ulberg. So I'm sure Sterling going to take some notes on that. My initial pick on this one is going to be Navajo Sterling. I think, Jan's just age bracket does not favor him very well here at 43 years of age. I was going to pick Bogdan in the rematch as well, just so you guys know, just because he was able to knock down Jan Blachowicz, and I think there's no reason why he can't do it again. I think on paper, Jan is the better fighter, but we're not getting the Jan of the old, not the Jan that was wearing the UFC belt. We're getting a much older version who's had some layoffs, who's had some injuries here. So I think you got to go Sterling, just because I think Sterling could finish the job here. I don't think he's going to gas out like Bogdan Gustaf did in their fight. I could see Sterling going the full 3 rounds, or potentially getting a finish here. I'm going to lean more towards decision. I know finish, does seem more likely in this case, where you do have an older guy who's been dropped a few times. But this is a big jump up from Ion Cutelaba and Bruno Lopez and these types of opponents here. So I could see Sterling just using his speed, getting the better shots, and Jan just being a little bit too slow in there. And I could see Sterling potentially winning a decision. As far as the odds on this fight, I imagine Navajo Sterling's going to be favored in this one. I would probably go like a 2-1, like it could be like a minus 250 favorite, maybe a bit lower just because of Jan's background and pedigree and who he's fought. Could also see it being like maybe a minus 150 situation here for Sterling, but I would be pretty surprised if Sterling was not the favorite in this fight. So that's something to sort of keep in mind in this one. And we got the scorecards up here for Olberg and Blachowicz. Okay, so majority of media did feel like Olberg won this one. Sorry, you can't see the same screen I'm seeing. Let me pull this down a little bit. You can see it there. Majority of media thought that Olberg won that fight, but Blachowicz was very close as well. So that's just something to sort of consider when you're looking at everything here. But yeah, my official pick is going to be Navajo Sterling by decision. It's going to be a good card. The Belgrade card in Serbia. Of course, you got that main event between Daniel Rodriguez and Uros Medic. That's going to be interesting. And should be an interesting matchup here. And also, one other thing I'll just mention here. Sterling fighting for the third time, and we're not even we're just at the halfway point of the year. Is that too much for him? Some guys, when they fight this much, can be a bit tired. Remember a couple of years ago with Reiner de Ritter, him cutting too much weight, that played into him losing to Brendan Allen. I wonder if the same thing could apply here to Sterling. But at the very least, I do think this is a huge opportunity here for Sterling. Sterling wins this fight, he's going to be right up there with the contenders, right? Because a win over Jan Blachowicz usually situates you pretty well. So this is a huge opportunity for him. And I hate to say it for Jan, like he's got to win this fight. If he doesn't win this fight, where does his career go at 43? He's not on the point yet where we've seen him decline, like where he's getting finished. I mean, if he does get finished here, then maybe this is the fight where we see Jan have a huge decline in his career. But we haven't really seen that yet because, again, the crazy thing with Jan Blachowicz, and he's sort of defying the odds here, I mean, he's going the distance with guys like Pereira and Olberg. Like, that speaks volumes. Think of how many people Pereira's knocked out. He's pretty much knocked out everyone except for Jan, right? Like, he's finished Yuri and everyone else. If you look at light heavyweight, Ankalaev, right? He's been in there with some of the best. So I tend to think that at some point that's going to falter. This could happen here with Sterling. But yeah, I think the UFC did Navajo Sterling a huge favor here because even if he loses, who cares? He's so young that he loses a fight like this. I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal. I think for Jan, this is sort of a must-win situation. I did interview Jan earlier this week, literally hours before the Bogdan fight was pulled from him. And it sounded like camp went really well. You can find that interview, by the way, on Home of Fight. It's on their YouTube channel. You can check that out. But a lot of good insight into Jan. He's feeling healthy. He's feeling good. Seems like a guy that can still compete for a while, but all it takes is one fight, one knockout loss to sort of change that. But love the replacement fight here. I think it's a good fight for both, sort of a passing of the guard here. Can Sterling get some revenge for his buddy Israel Adesanya? We'll see, but a really fun fight here for the UFC Serbia card. So I want to know what your thoughts are in the comments below. Let me know, do you like this matchup? What do you think the odds are going to be? And what's your early prediction for this one? Follow me on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, @Lynch on Sports. My name is James Lynch. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.